Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining today. My name is Benjamin Tressinger. I'm from the Australian National University. Today, we're going to talk about startups, how to make it or break it, and how to exceed with science startups or in science entrepreneurship in general. This webinar, Easier Webinar series, is hosted by eLife. It's a series that aims to give early career research a platform to discuss issues important to you in research, you and your research career. Today's speakers will discuss how to succeed in science startups and how to be an entrepreneur while in academia or after you left academic research. The webinar will begin with the panelists sharing their stories. Then the second half of the webinar, roughly at 12:30, we'll be putting your questions to them. To ask questions, you can type the questions box on the GoWebinar function panel, or you can tweet us. We are at eLife Community and using the hashtag #EasierWednesdays. Finally, I'd just like to let you know that we are recording this webinar and will make it available on YouTube in the near future. So really, eLife's mission is about helping scientists accelerate discovery by operating a platform for research communication, encourage and recognize the most responsible behaviors in science. This webinar series is presented by the Early Career Advisory Group or board. And as I said, the questions you could have, please tweet at us at the hashtag #EasierWednesday or the GoToWebinar series. Okay, as I said, we have a list of exciting speakers today. Briefly, I'm Benjamin Tressinger from Australian National University. I'm one of the eLife advisory group members, and I do research on fungi and plants. For today, we're going to talk about science startups and how to succeed in science startups and how to tackle entrepreneurship while in academia or after you have left academia. So first, there will be Debbie Saunders talking about her wildlife drone project. And Dr. Debbie Saunders is an ecologist and chief remote pilot wildlife drones founder and CEO. Debbie. I think you...
Here we go, sorry. I'd muted myself. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I was a researcher, or I still am a researcher at the Australian National University in Canberra, Australia. However, I'm an ecologist and I've always done my research on small migratory birds. And one of the things that we really never knew anything about was the movements of these birds, because we can't track them using satellite or GPS tags. You can only do radio tracking. So one of my research projects was to see if it was possible to develop a drone technology that we could do that with. And after finding a big collaborative team of people, we managed to pull together some technology and demonstrated that that was possible. Right at the end of the project, we got some media coverage of what we had achieved, because it was actually the first time anyone had really done that before in the world. And so that was quite, in terms of being a researcher, just kind of doing my own thing, it was quite remarkable for me to be contacted by people all over the world going, how can I get one of these things? So I then had to explore, the project was at its end, so I had to explore how I could possibly get this technology out to other people, especially when we had actually identified a whole bunch of limitations right at the end of the project, which meant that it was challenging to use in a practical sense. So that was sort of how the journey started. I guess that was coupled together with the fact that I was still applying for major grants in terms of getting further projects up and running, and they weren't coming through. So I did apply for 2 or 3 major grants, and I didn't have any projects left. I've never done the teaching. I've only ever done the researching at the university. So I started exploring the translation of this research prototype into a commercial product, and started doing innovation courses. I knew nothing about validating markets, or I didn't know what IP really was, because I'm an ecologist. I just go out in the nature reserves and study the animals and plants there. I had no idea what really was involved in intellectual property of technology. And so basically ever since then, I've been on a massive learning journey. I've gone and done innovation courses and business courses, lean startup, just trying to educate myself on how I can do that. And yeah, that validation of the market, actually contacting people and seeing whether they, there was a real need for this product, and people had contacted me, but whether there was actually enough need there for putting the effort in or trying to secure money to get that product built for everybody. So that took a couple of years. I also had two beautiful girls in that time, and so I was working part-time during that whole period as well. And in a way, it was good because I had to be at home with my young daughter, but I could kind of still be learning and exploring things while I was doing that. And both my girls are now at school, and so I was able to then embark on this on a more full-time basis. I found a friend from back when I was at uni as an undergrad, and we started on the journey together. So she was my co-founder, and we really, we just took it one bit at a time. We had no great expectations of what exactly was going to be the outcome, but we just thought we'd give it a try and we'd try and educate ourselves. And then we started winning innovation awards, just small ones like a $10,000 award, or and then we got a $30,000 award, and it just kind of kept building. And each time we would just set ourselves a new goal, and oh well, I wonder if we could get some customers. And if we don't get any customers, then it's not really going to work out. But then we managed to find some customers, so we kept going. So it's been really incremental. There was no great strategy. It was just an opportunity, and then investors seemed to start showing interest in our business, and so then we actually had to then find a whole bunch of investors to put some money in, because I actually needed an income after several years of not really getting much from this. And so then it was quite interesting because as an academic, I always had secured my research funding by writing grant applications and selling my idea and getting a big team of people together. And it actually isn't that different in terms of the business side of things. So I think all of those skills of applying for different grants sort of set me up quite nicely in terms of applying for government grants for innovation, but also pitching to investors. And now I spend a lot of time making sure I could try and convey everything about my business in like 2 to 5 minutes, which I'd never really done before with my research. And I think it's a fantastic skill to be able to convey a lot of information in a very short space of time. So I've quite enjoyed that. And the other thing I have really enjoyed is actually just surrounding myself with people who really believe in me. And for me, that's very empowering. And it's actually very, very different to my experience of academia, where it didn't matter how many times I proved myself, how many times I delivered on massive projects and managed massive projects. I never really got the credit for any of my work, either through the university or through my supervisor. So I needed a new direction. My academic, I got too senior. As soon as I wasn't a PhD student, I became, I think, too expensive. And so I wasn't cheap labor anymore. And so I had to kind of find my own way, which I did for a while. And I still am associated with the university. But yeah, having the business, I found is really, really rewarding. It's really, really hard work as well. And we're actually going into our second funding round now, or a second lot of investment funding. And I employ 4 people, and I have 5 contractors, and we have an office. I have multiple drones. We have customers all across Australia and internationally. So we're just starting to take off, which is really exciting, but we've still got a long way to go. So I don't sort of see myself as a successful business yet. I think when I'm self-sufficient in terms of income generation for all of my staff, and our product is slicker than it currently is, then I think that's when there are successes along the way, but I think there's still a long way to go. But it's been a pretty amazing journey.
Cool, thank you, Debbie. I just want to pick up something before we move on, because you said you need your elevator pitch. And what's your 30-second elevator pitch of your company?
Oh, wow, there you go. I put myself in that one. Well, radio tracking animals the easy way. If you find yourself wandering around searching for animals with your arm up in the air for hours, you need to come and talk to us because we have a solution that revolutionises the radio tracking industry. I don't know if that's 30 seconds, but that'll do for now.
Shorter, even better. Yeah, cool. Thank you. That was great. So now we move on, before we move on to questions, to Dr. Pradek Mahalabar, and he's the co-founder of Body Time and Health. And maybe Pradek, start up with your 30 seconds elevator pitch and then move on to what you want to say.
Thank you. Body Time basically helps you to live a better, younger, and a sustainable life. And we tell with your we tell with the help of your own genetics that what's your best working, best eating, and best sleeping time. So that's what we are doing actually at Body Time. So my name is Pratik Mahalwa, originally from India, and I was a passionate researcher when I came to Germany. Did my master's here and my PhD at Max Planck with Christian Andersen Bollhardt. I had a lot of fun in science, learned a lot, and was also involved in some other initiative during my PhD. So get a little bit of a taste outside the lab, which actually initiated the whole thinking in my brain that probably I want to do something outside the lab. And then I joined one of the startups in very early 2013, Paparity, which is coming from like a PubMed PubMed not for biology or biomedical sciences, but also for all subjects out there, and an open source. So we built that, and we built a business model on top of that, and that was fun. And then I thought, okay, but there is a lot of things missing in terms of how to build business, how to scale it up, and so on and so on. And then I prepared for strategy consulting and joined strategy consulting at Ernst & Young. And for the last 4 years, I have been working at Ernst & Young. It helped me a lot in terms of how the business is working with the big CEOs, doing all sorts of big business transactions, understanding M&A, mergers and acquisition, and so on and so on. And then after some point, I realized, I still have somewhere deep inside me a passion for science, and I understand business. I also understand science very well. Might be I can create a bridge and translating those basic science ideas into real businesses. And I have been contacted by Berlin Institute of Health, which is one of a government entity here in Germany, and their mission is to translate clinical or basic science into businesses. So I joined one of the teams here at Charité in Berlin at a medical school, and the lab is working on circadian rhythms. So they found out a test for a blood test for measuring precise timing of circadian rhythm. And the key question was, who will be the perfect customer, or what use cases are out there where we can use this test? So basically, I help them a lot in terms of testing different sectors and use cases, talking about how we can use circadian rhythms in oncology, talking about how we can use circadian rhythms in diabetes patients, and so on and so on. And also thinking about how we can use it for non-medical purpose. Yeah. And we figured it out in the end that the shortest way to the market, or we can cover a bigger crowd without having too much of effort, especially as a non-diagnostic tool. So that's why we are launching on 7th of October our first digital plus diagnostic test, but it's only business to business. So what we are doing is work health management, and here we go to hospitals or big factories where we take blood and analyze people who are working in shifts, that what is the best working time for them. Instead of working in 3 different shifts, they should work in 2 or 1. And we are working on this kind of concept with different companies, and health insurance is paying for that. So that's basically closing the whole loop. I think there's a lot more to it in future. We are also doing some R&D in the background, trying to see how we can change from the blood-based test to something else, something non-invasive, and so on. But I think it was a very incredible story when Debbie said that, you know, you come from a different world. Science is a totally different world. You have no idea that how the money is flowing outside the lab, right? So you have to prepare the business model around it. Then you have to look for investors. So we are currently in discussion with some investors from US and also from Europe, with some bigger pharma companies, that how we can roll it out on a bigger level. So it's all fun, and it's especially running startup is more. I think you need resilience. Yeah. So every week there is some kind of thing happening and you will be thinking, oh, we are gonna crash. And this resilience I developed during my PhD, because every week the experiments were crashing, right? So I was thinking, no, something is gonna be better, and next week it will be better, and so on and so on. So I think doing startup, you need resilience, you need focus. It's very important to have focus, and the most important is that you need to create a value proposition which fits to one of your customers. So usually as a scientist, we look at the technology and say, wow, this is the best, and I think we are going to rock the world. But that's not true. I think the first exercise one should do is looking at what value you are generating for someone out there, and that's something which is key. And there are many courses out there online where scientists can do that. Yeah. So summing it up, I'm excited. I'm passionate about this topic. When I was doing consulting, it was more a job. Like I have to do this 9 to 5, or not 9 to 5, but 9 to 12 in the night. But in this topic, I'm more passionate, and I spend a lot of time. It's like it's my project, or it's like I'm solving a big problem in the world out there, right? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Pradek. Yeah, I mean, you seem to connect a little bit also with what Debbie said, that it's your project that you really have the full ownership. And Debbie was like, oh yeah, also you get more acknowledged actually having your own startup for what you do than you might be actually getting in academia. Maybe that's something we can talk about afterwards. I think that's actually a really interesting point. But for now, we're gonna move on to Natalia. Oh, sorry, Bill Cisek, something like that. It was probably wrong, and I do apologize for this. Dr. Natalia is the founder, director, and chairperson at Stitching Solaris Onderutzuk in something else I can't pronounce. I apologize. Owner at Welcome Solutions and a PhD candidate. Thank you. Please take it away, folks.
Thank you so much. So thank you, Benjamin, for introduction or inviting me to this panel. So briefly, I might tell you first how I got here to the place I am now. So I was as an undergrad, I was studying in Warsaw, in Poland, where I'm from, and I was studying at interfaculty studies in natural sciences. So I chose the studies also because it was a lot of personal freedom. So that was, I think, the first sign ever that I'm more of an entrepreneur than actual like academic researcher. But at that point, I was very determined to actually go for academic career. And I graduated from mathematics, physics, and psychology. So I did 3 different master studies within this college. And then I moved to the Netherlands for to further study neuroscience. And it was initially a plan to just get a good education and get back to Poland, but I fell in love with the Netherlands, and I decided to stay here. I think it's a wonderful place to live, and I think I will stay for a long time. So at the moment, I'm waiting for my defense in computational neuroscience, but I think for the next 2 years, I will not come back to any academic position. I will rather focus on the business side of things. So my PhD, honestly speaking, my PhD was quite rocky. Reasons was because, yeah, I struggled with micromanagement. I always felt more of a free bird, and I felt best when I had a lot of personal freedom and freedom of choice of how I spend my time. And I think some parts of my PhD were difficult for me for that reason, because it was a very focused project. And I also I was struggling with the fact that it was quite theoretical, and I didn't really have like personal contact with the stakeholders. So I could not really see how my research is applied, and I could not really see the beneficiaries. So for me, this was altogether very like difficult to go through. And in the end of my studies, I decided to become a member of Organization for Human Brain Mapping Student and Postdoc Special Interest Group. That is a group oriented, the group of students and postdocs within this organization and within that group, I was a career development manager, and I was managing international mentoring. That was wonderful, and actually that was a very good decision for me, and I loved it. And I discovered that I'm a people person. I'm not a type of a specialist that would get joy from sitting behind a computer and solving very focused problems for the rest of my life. I actually discovered that I get much more joy from finding mentors to people, helping them in self-development, and that changed a lot in my life. So after my studies, I also thought, well, this position I have in the council, it's only for 2 years. So what do I do next? Because I would like to continue this direction. I would like to have more, contribute more. And I came up with the idea of creating a foundation, Stifting Solaris. And the main points in this foundation is to work out new methods for better mentoring in science, but also help young researchers in finding jobs outside academia, because that was also one problem I was struggling with. So there was not much guidance in that direction. Sometimes, scientists are usually multi-potentiates. They have a lot of talents, a lot of different interests, and sometimes it's really hard if you're very talented and have a lot of things on your desk and a lot of things you're passionate about. Sometimes it's really hard to find your dream job after your contract expires and you decide to look out beyond academic career. So I started a foundation last year, and I also loved it. And in the end, in the process, I think I would rather go this direction with my life rather than come back to academic track. I mean, it's also one thing I have to tell you, it's not binary. So the fact that you don't have academic position does not mean that you're not a researcher anymore. Especially if you have a computational background, as I did, like you can still publish papers. Like this year, even though I don't have an academic contract anymore, I published more papers than during my whole PhD, just because I was very free to choose whom I'm working with and what topics I work on. And even though I work on my own projects and on my own businesses, I publish more than I was publishing during my PhD contract. So I have to from research once you move outside academia. But the rest of the story was that in the process, that was also my own self-discovery, that once I set a foundation, actually in the Netherlands, the law treats, according to the tax regulations, a foundation is treated the same as a company. So it's like a non-profit type of company. So to run this foundation, I had to learn everything about tax regulations and how to declare income, how to declare taxes, etc. So I realized at some point that I already know how to run a company, because this is basically how you have to manage foundations in the Netherlands. So with that knowledge, I was quite ready to start my own company as well. And also in the process, last 2 years, I was going a lot to blockchain conferences, and I met a lot of entrepreneurs there. And I also realized that a lot of people have problem with writing and with writing properly. So like referring to what Pratik was saying before, like it's very important to show the value proposition and present your project and actually explain the value also to the stakeholders and investors. And a lot of bright entrepreneurs, like budding entrepreneurs, they have problem with this. So I kind of spotted the gap in the market. I first wrote a business plan as exchange for shares for one project, and second, I wrote a business plan for my own company, and both of these business plans had really good values from investors. So I felt, oh, I can do this actually, and I can learn how to write a business plan so it actually speaks to potential investors. So this summer I set one of them is helping new projects and also companies that want to launch spin-offs in writing business plans for the new projects and products. And second thing is organizing career trainings for PhDs that are thinking of a career switch. So we all for researchers, and within these trainings, yeah, you can for the whole day you can get a lot of like self-discovery exercise and a lot of information about which door to knock at once you discover what is your what is your dream job. And yeah, so if you're interested, you could actually take a look at the website. And I'm currently finishing a book about this topic because I think this is a big gap on the market. Like there is no book dedicated to this topic, and I'm very, I was myself quite disappointed to find out that there is no book I could read to actually find my way. So I in the end wrote my own book about this. So yeah, that's gonna come out this winter. And one thing I can tell you, just a few very brief conclusions about what I learned about entrepreneurship. First of all, as a researcher, you have a lot of advantages. Actually, a lot of lifestyle between entrepreneurs and researchers is the same. So yeah, it's all based on creativity, self-management. You have to be good with people. Also, you have to read people and be able to collaborate, and you have to learn every day. So you already have a lot of skills that entrepreneur needs in the daily life. So that's already a big advantage at the start. And also entrepreneurship is something, you might have a talent for entrepreneurship, but you might be not discover this talent up to this point, because now this is some of the things that your teachers will not tell you at school. So if you're good at math, they will tell you go study mathematics. If you're good at physical exercise, they will tell you go to sports as a profession. But if you have a natural drive for entrepreneurship, it's very rarely the case that they will guide in the right direction at school. So many of you might already be like have a soul of entrepreneur, but you have to discover it for yourself, because yeah, you have to try. You have to think of what type of projects you would like to build, and you have to try, because you might discover that this is a life for you. And honestly, I feel very happy with my life right now, and I think the hardest part of it is to take the decision to try. And once you actually are committed to launch your own project, then it's much easier. Yeah, and maybe I think my time is coming to the end. So yeah, and I think yeah, one last thing I would like to say is that for me what was most helpful to start as an entrepreneur, to at some point stop thinking of myself as an unemployed person and start thinking of as an entrepreneur with zero revenue. And then, because if you start thinking of yourself this way, then you start thinking about how to change the situation and how to generate revenue. So just yeah, stop thinking of yourself as an unemployed person and start brainstorming about what is the value you could add to projects and to people's lives, and what you could offer, and then you will be fine. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I have a lot of plans. I'm also involved in building 2 platforms that are like bigger projects, but I think it's always good to start from doing things that are a little bit more safe. So consultancy is type of a safe business which doesn't have much like barriers. So if you have a skill that is useful for the people, you can sell the skill. So this is why consultancy is a good little business to start with. And building big platforms or like really big products is something that I do on the side, because I know that this is a high risk and high reward type of business. So and you have to wait a long time before you have revenue from that. So that's why I only do it in free time. And for some of the projects I'm involved in, I cannot really tell you the details because I'm bound with some non-disclosure agreements, and I could be sued for that. So I can't tell you everything I'm doing, but yeah, but this is a hobby anyways. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. That was really interesting too. So we have really like some quite diverse speakers and talents up here. Like we have like really people at different career stages here, and also with very different projects and different career paths and different actually startups too. It's pretty interesting. But what came out was that you have to, like, one thing which I heard was, which is different from academia, is that you have to have a clear value proposition. So you have to actually, because you attract money, and that might be something different what you don't have to do in science, and that you have to have more focus. I think science could also benefit from focus, but you might have to be even more focused. So I would like to just pick up these two things for now, and before we go to questions. So how do you actually achieve focus, and how do you then, based on this focus, generate a value proposition which you can sell? And I will maybe start with product for you.
Yeah, so I think, so especially from the technology, most of the scientists start from the tech side, right? So technique, or they have discovered something in the lab, and there are many possible use cases for that. Yeah, you can use it in medical sector, you can use it in some other sectors, and so on and so on. You really have to do some kind of prioritization, that what are the different things I need in order to go to market, and how much time it's going to take. For example, there is a regulatory procedure I have to fulfill, or who are the different customer, how big is the customer segment. You have to generate all these hypotheses in the beginning, and then you have to go out there and talk to people, right? So I literally went out to a doctor, to a sleep specialist clinic, and I said, I want to talk to your patients. And he said, feel free, sit in the room and start talking to them. So I start talking to them, ask them, hey guys, we have a test. Would you like to do the test? And they said, yeah, why not? But how much it cost? And then I tell them the price, and they said, no, sorry, we don't have that much money. So you realize what are the key factors, and looking at those factors, you have to prioritize that what make more sense in short term to generate some revenue, but also to make sure that your product is out there in the market, because once your product is out, you're going to hear so much of feedback, right? That whether it's good, whether it's bad, and you're going to iterate it again and again. And it's very important to make sure that your product is out in the market. So focus a particular segment, a particular type of customers, and make it sure that you can go out in the market as soon as possible, and start from there. And then might be once you fail there, or might be you are successful, who knows, then you can move to other segments. You cannot do all 10-15 segments in parallel. It's like doing 15 scientific projects in the parallel in lab, and you will fail all of them. So rather focus on one, and if it's not working, then switch to another one. And regarding the value proposition, as I said, you can generate hypotheses by saying, okay, I think it's useful in oncology, or it's useful to sleep patients, or it's useful to XYZ. And then you should go out there and talk to them, because it's all your hypothesis might be that's false, right? So in order to really know the value, you need to go out and talk to people.
I did find that one of the interesting things when I first started out, that a massive part of validating my ideas was doing just that as well, actually finding people and talking to them. And it's really cool to be able to just call people up. I actually quite enjoyed it once I got over. I mean, I don't generally like people. I like to be away from people. So this is a whole new thing for me. I like to just be out in wild places away from civilization. That's where I'm happiest. And so put me in a room full of other people and tell me I have to go talk to someone, and oh my God, it's not my scene. But I'm getting much better at that. And in this case, it was mainly phone calls, so calling up people. And in fact, what I found was that I found it really invigorating, because I talk to people, and I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just trying to find out what is their biggest problem, what is their biggest pain point, and does my solution, or do I have a solution for them? I don't know. I need to find out what the problem is first. And I spent a lot of time doing that through a couple of different innovation programs. And we were pushed quite hard to contact lots of people, as many as possible, like 100 people. You have to speak to at least 100 people and start from there, kind of thing. So it was an interesting exercise, and I learned a lot very, very quickly. And then as well, like in terms of value proposition, people can get really excited. I had some people I talked to for quite a long time who were just like, yeah, I can't wait to get this thing, you know. And but then when we came up with a price on what it would cost us to deliver that service to them, they just went, no. Oh yeah, that's really exciting, but I don't have that money. And I'm like, okay. So we had to pivot, or what they call pivoting, which is just basically changing direction. And I think it's just the openness to new ideas that I really love in this whole thing, in that you can change on a weekly basis if you want. Unlike a research question you have to work on for 3 years, we adapt much more rapidly if we need to. And if the value isn't there, then you have to seek out what will they get value from in terms of what we have to offer. And so we had some mentors at the time who gave us ideas, and we pivoted and we changed our business model. We've never written a business plan. We have a business model canvas, which you can change, you know, with a couple of sticky notes. You can change your ideas, which is fabulous. And so we have that kind of a setup, and we do revisit it and change it as needed. And I do find that helpful, because it actually, on one sheet of paper, you can walk through from, you know, what is the problem, who are the customers, how are you going to meet them, what are your resources, all on one A3 sheet. And if you can get it down onto there, then you can really start to have this overview of everything you're doing. And in this case, what we did, instead of offering a service, we actually said, okay, well, how about we hire out our system? We have a really niche market. We're never going to be able to, I'm not interested in producing a consumer product. I don't want this to contribute to the world waste problems. And people don't tend to need it all of the time. And so we turned around and offered to hire it out, which required a whole bunch of other things for our customers. And because we're at the leading edge of the industry, there were questions about, like how viable is that? Because not everyone is a drone pilot. And it's like, well, the world is changing. And so we went down that path, and we were still talking to those same people and changed our offer. And as soon as we changed it, they said yes. And that was it. And from then on, we actually offer a combination. So for people who that doesn't work for, we offer what? We offer a service. For those who are set up and have their license, we offer a hire. So yeah, it has been really interesting to make that switch. And now it seems like a fantastic business model. You get recurring revenue. The customers always have the latest technology because it's changing every week. And so it's really nice that you can change at any point. But I think a lot of researchers might have trouble always thinking about where you're going to find the money. Being an ecologist and doing conservation work, you're often doing things for the greater good. And so sometimes I do feel a bit guilty asking for money for something, but then I used to feel guilty. I don't feel guilty now, because it's like, well, if I wasn't able to generate enough income to keep my business going, then nobody would have this system at all. And I'm basically putting my whole life into this thing. I'm really working hard. And so at least what I can expect out of that is a sustainable business. And it seems to be going okay so far. So yeah, it's quite interesting actually, going down that path.
Does it
Yeah,
sorry. the two things which I picked up here were really you have to talk with people, and you have to talk a lot with people, because you have to validate actually your ideas outside so they become valuable, and other people buy into your ideas, of course, because you need to generate money. So my question, and maybe we can actually start with Natalia for this, would be like, how do you actually, like, what is your, do you have a pathway to being sustainable, actually becoming a full-fledged business? And how do you cope with the knowledge that most startups fail?
Oh, actually, I would like to debunk this myth. I mean, first of all, when you look at the statistics, I mean, there's this, I agree with you that there is this saying, you know, like 9 out of 10 startups fail. But when you look at the statistics, first of all, most entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs, so they just, you know, sometimes you have to try a few times before it works. Also, hard to predict how the market will react to your product. So I totally agree with the other list that research before you start before you launch the product. But secondly, a lot of companies, they also actually when you look at the statistics, at least in the Netherlands, it's not 9 out of 10. It's maybe 3 out of 4 that fail. But if you also look at what is the typical trajectory for an entrepreneur, like everyone I know who tried long enough succeeded. So actually, I never met an entrepreneur who was trying for 10 years and did not succeed to develop a company. It's just you have to be persistent, and you have to have your internal motivation and learn from mistakes and learn every day. And then eventually, if you learn quick enough and you're mindful about the world, about other people, about how the market changes, etc., then eventually you will succeed. That's how I approach this. And actually, to answer your other question, how to make sure that you make money. That's, I mean, a bit related to the previous question. You have to make sure that you have a market. So for me, for instance, like this year in June, I went to a conference in Rome, and then I had a seminar there about post drugs. It was a seminar where we expected 80 people to come to the room, and we prepared for 80 people, but instead like 300 or 400 people tried to make it inside, and they were sitting on the floor, and also it was, for me, that was madness, because many of these people, they were standing outside the room for an hour and listening without even seeing the slides. So I was like, this is madness. And if so many people actually are interested in this topic and they're willing to even stand outside the room to listen to the presentation, then this is clearly something that can be a business. That was very clear. And I think you also have to always take into account who is paying and what is the motivation of, because there are different groups, and then their motivation to spend money is different. So for instance, researchers, they often have this attitude that, well, they spend their whole life on education, and they are not like, if you put a price tag on like a one-day training that is a few €100, they're like, this might be too much for me. I spent all my life on learning, so maybe this is too much to spend. But then you have to know that institutions would actually be interested in paying for this training, because this actually shortens the time that you need to find another job. So since the institution has to pay for the outcarrying, so the unemployment benefits, then for the institution it actually makes perfect sense to pay this amount of money if that can shorten your job search by a few months. So you always have to think, first you have to produce value, but you have to also think about whom to sell it to. And I'm personally a big fan of a passive income. So I also have passive income myself. I have rental money from properties that I bought before as a PhD student, actually. So that was, I think, also one sign of being an entrepreneur already early on because I was saving a lot and investing on stock exchange and buying some rental properties, and so I didn't really have to worry about that from the start. And I think yeah, this financial cushion to have is very important when you start as an entrepreneur, because otherwise, yeah, of course, you will have this very high basic stress levels, and I know a lot of entrepreneurs have that. So I also try to eliminate it from the start, so that, you know, even if I don't have a client for some time, I can still survive. And yeah, so I kind of thought about it very early on, and I'm a big fan of passive income, and that's also something we train. So in these career trainings we organize, one of the modules to talk about is solely about finances and about how to build your wealth and how to reduce your daily stress as a researcher. So that's also, I think, very, very important part of life in general. Whenever you are an entrepreneur or researcher or in any other profession, I think to build your financial cushion, it's very, very basic thing that you should do. Yeah.
Just Braddock or Debbie, do you want to say anything
Yeah,
about this? Like, how would you
sorry,
cope with
I just want to say, I think going back to the question you asked, so failing is important. Yeah, and I think in Europe we don't take failing as a positive sign, but I have been talking to many investors in US, in California, in New York, and they don't give their money to someone who have not failed at least 2 times. So because they think that he will fail with their money. So failing is part of the system, right? So failing is exactly like doing science. When you're doing experiments, it's rarely that you are successful in your first try on those experiments. Yeah, so you have to do again and again and again. So I think failing is a part of the whole system. So you should really take it as a next step, either to the same startup or to the next startup. You learn a lot while failing. However, there are a couple of reasons why startups fail, right? So I'm not looking at the startup, but from my own experience, not looking at the statistics, but from my own experience, I think one of the top reasons is team. Yeah, so a team is really key to take the startup to the next level. You should have a team with whom you can argue, you can fight, and next day have a dinner and a drink again, and fight or argue and again dinner. So this kind of thing could happen again and again. And if you are in that circle, that means you're in the right team, because you're going to take some hard decisions while running your startup or your business. And definitely there will be a lot of arguments, a lot of discussions. But if you guys cannot argue and discuss, then you are not a good co-founders together, right? So I think you have to find the right people who are complementary, thinking a little bit different. And that is a kind of a successful recipe, but then there are other points, because I think we discussed previously, value proposition, business, and so on. So you need to focus on the right market, in the right direction. Many startups fail because they are focusing in the wrong direction, really giving a push to the technology rather looking at the value. So these are 2 major things. Money is another. I think Natalia already mentioned that there are many steps you can take in order to circumvent the money problem. But I would say, if you have a great idea, try to prepare a pitch deck before having the product. Go out in the market. There are a couple of people who only fund ideas. And if you believe in your idea, they will definitely believe. But if you are like shaky, then they will never believe, right? So, so I say these are the 3 major reasons. But again, I said failing is part of the system. So if you fail, it's a gold medal technically for investors.
Cool. Thank you. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's also something which is different from Australia to the US. I think where failing is just part of the game, where I think in Australia, I think it's not that much, at least of now. We come to the last question, because we have an international panel from different countries with different experiences. I had a last question. I would like each of you for 2 minutes for this. And this is like, is there anything special getting a startup running in your geographic region? So because we don't have any problems in the US, but we have really different countries where you're at. And is there anything specific which is maybe makes it really easy or easier, or makes it more difficult to do so? And I give everybody 2 minutes, and then we're going to wrap it up.
So
Maybe Debbie, do you
editing
want to start? Yeah.
So I missed the start of the question.
So the question was about like what is the special circumstance running a startup in your geographic region? So like is there anything special getting a startup up and running in Australia compared to anywhere else, or do you think it's just all the same? Like what makes Australia special in terms of getting a startup up and running?
So I started my startup in Canberra, and Canberra is a relatively small city in Australia, much smaller than Sydney or Melbourne. And I don't know about all around the world, but I think it has been advantageous in a slightly smaller space where innovation is actually there's been a real push for that. It started a couple of years before I even had this idea. And so when I came on, they had, for example, these meetings every Wednesday, a First Wednesday Connect. So it's an innovation thing, and it's free and anybody can go. And that it was a room full of middle-aged white men in suits, and I'm like, I don't even know how to start a conversation in this room. I felt very uncomfortable, and the first one I didn't enjoy at all. But then someone else encouraged me to keep going, and I went along with a mission. And that mission was to meet a female entrepreneur, because I really was finding it very difficult to find one at all. And just things like that, just have a goal, and that's the main thing. And so when I went along to this event, I actually did that. I met this amazing woman who is actually now one of the directors in my business, and she's been an amazing mentor. And so I think, I don't think it matters where you are in the world, but if you have that network, or establish a network around yourself where you can, if you ever have an issue, just ask. And it's my biggest thing since I've joined the world of being an entrepreneur is, if in doubt, just ask someone, and just keep asking and asking and asking until you get something that you can work with. And I think in academia you don't do that a huge amount. You want to solve the problems yourself. But I've always been a bit of an asker. I have no problem asking people when I have a problem. And I find that's really, really valuable. And I suspect it's the same all around the world. But I do think that because it is a smaller community, if you really put the work in and deliver, then you can, I guess you have easier, there's less competition, I suppose, in terms of the grants that are available, the investors that are available. Even though it's a smaller pool, I've actually found that that's worked quite well for me. I don't know how it would have gone if I was 3 hours north of here in Sydney. I don't know how much support I would have given or how much personal interaction I would have had. So I feel like I've actually joined a community, an innovation community, and for me, that's been really, really critical in my journey. I suspect it might be similar elsewhere.
Cool, thank you. That's really interesting actually to hear that even within our countries, there's actually different spots, and how different spots actually influence how you actually perform. I didn't even think that far, but thank you. Pradek had to leave us because he had a call with an investor, I think. So fittingly, he had to leave. So the last 2-3 minutes, Natalia, before I'm gonna wrap it up for everybody.
Hello, I'm back.
Are you back?
Yeah,
Okay.
so actually,
let's give Pradek the word because let's give Pradek the word because he has to leave and take off really soon after. I thought he already did. So yeah, the question was really briefly, is there anything special getting a startup running in, I think, in Berlin or in Germany?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple of Berlin is amazing in terms of startup scene. If you go for 100 meters, you find 10 startups. So they basically support each other, help each other. And there are a couple of grants in Germany which helps you to do a kickoff of your scientific idea. There is one grant which is called from BMBF, and it basically helps just with a very basic, you have a very basic scientific idea to be translated, then you apply for this grant. It's called Exist, and they fund you your position in the university for a year. So there are such type of grants available in Germany to basically kick off with an idea, and I think that's incredible. Basically to support early career entrepreneurs, especially kicking off the career and not thinking about the finances and so on. So I think these are the two things which I can think of. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Pratik. And also, if you have to leave, feel free just to take off and take your next call. That is all good because we might run over for a minute or two. Thank you very much for coming by.
Thanks a lot. Very nice to meet all of you.
Yeah.
And best of luck, Debbie. Best of luck, Natalia. Have a nice time. Yeah.
Yeah. Before you take off, give the last word to Natalia, and then you're gonna see you after that.
So actually, in the Netherlands, I think the integrity is quite high. So people are very helpful to each other in general, and they don't backstab each other too much. So I think the atmosphere is like for entrepreneurship is good. One thing I would say, Netherlands is really tricky tax-wise because the Dutch tax office is world famous for not knowing the tax law. So for me, this is the main problem with starting a business, that I'm calling them and they basically pass me through from one office to another. And even with very simple questions like what tax rate I should charge on my services, it's really hard to get the information. Actually, last night I've been to a party for entrepreneurs, and I was very lucky to find a guy who is from a tax office and works there, and kind of chased him as long as it took, and I shook this information out of him because he was in the room, so he couldn't run. And that was actually my first success in getting information about the taxes I should charge. And on the phone, it's absolutely not possible. So that's one difficulty in the Netherlands. And second thing is, I think you have to know where to go, because especially if you're in the research environment, you have a lot of like startup accelerators and a lot of people that are paid full time as office workers, just hired by the government to be consultants and these business coaches that you can go to. But these people often, like, they want to help you, but they never really run any successful business by themselves. Like, I was also a part of these programs at the university, and I took courses of entrepreneurship. I was not very happy because it was textbook knowledge. So I spent a lot of time there, and in the end, they were just passing me from one person to the other. I think it's really better to go for conferences for startups, like get into the environment of real angel investors and people who have connections to angel investors. Just go to private investors, because these people are in for 10 or 20 years and they are in with their own money, and they will be able to help you much faster. They are much more realistic about what your project is worth, and they have to put their own money into it. That means that your project is worth. So I think you have to like kind of go out, and if you want academic institutions and go from one accelerator to the other, you might just live in a cuckoo land with your project, honestly speaking. So you have to know where to go. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, everybody. I think that was a very exciting webinar today. So it was the number 1 of 2. So there's going to be another one in 9 hours, which will have slightly different flavors because we're going to have people from the US speaking too, which of course have a very different startup culture. So yeah, this webinar was about make it or break it and how to succeed in science startup. We had a really exciting discussion with Dr. Debbie Saunders, who runs Wildlife Drones in Australia. We are talking with Pratik Mahalabar, who is founder of Body, Time and Health in Europe. And last but not least, we had Natalia Bilitsik, who is the founder and owner of Welcome Solutions, which promotes entrepreneurship within ECRs. I think overall, what I took out of this was like, yeah, you have to talk with people, you have to be able to fail, but you have to actually learn from your failures and also learn from talking with people. And you have to find the right crowd, and the crowd which is going to support you and talks you up sometimes too, but you have to argue with your coworkers too, but in a friendly manner. And it's really about the value. It's really about all the value proposition you can make, because at the end, somebody needs to buy what you're trying to sell. And so you might have to adjust your initial ideas and to be successful. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Natalia, for still being around. And we just switch off. And if you want to hear more, there will be one in 9 hours. And this is also going to be recorded, and you can listen back later. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.